we have a request or an action item to approve the minutes from the April 21st meeting. Anybody read them and willing to approve?
I actually have a comment, if possible.
Yes.
Sure.
And again, this is relative to the G&A expenditures qualification of what took place at the meeting. It says here, just review detailed report of general and administrative expenses. My recollection of what happened is there's a little bit more, and I think I would recommend that we amend this to include what was recommended. And so just to go back on that, the conclusion at the end when I spoke about it was that we were going to investigate 3 significant expense line items that grew significantly faster than inflation to see exactly what drove that growth. Again, the 3 taken together, if just to have grown by inflation, would have been $3.2 million lower on an annual run rate basis. Those 3 were, again, Office of the Superintendent up 300% versus 28% inflation growth. Business Services up 81% versus inflation growth of 28%. And Human Resources up 72% versus, again, 28% inflation growth. These were all in other G&A. And my recollection of the meeting was that we were going to look at it. So I had expected to see it on the agenda today. And so at a minimum, I would like to go over that. But at a minimum, I suggest that for the minutes, we did more than just review the data that you put together, Conrad, which was fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'm good. I remember that as well, as there would be a follow-up. We have the 2 items on the agenda. I didn't think there would be time for the third with a complete intent to get back to that for sure. Fine. I wasn't trying to not do that. And so, yeah, so I'm fine with amending the minutes as.
Do we have secretary taking the notes?
Allison is back in the corner over there.
Okay, all right.
You can sit anywhere you like, Celeste. Yeah, you can sit next to Carmen.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll move the minutes
Second?
as amended.
You want to second? I'll second. All moved in second. Any discussion on this further? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, so that's April 21st. I'm sorry, this new agenda has got me comments here. So we did the minutes, we're now approving.
So there's a second action item there.
Number 2, approval
Yeah.
of recommendation to the Santa Barbara Unified School District Education Finance Advisory Committee establishing a focus for committee activities. Santa Barbara Unified Board of Trustees at the April 14th meeting asked that the members of the Finance Committee develop a focus for the committee agendas, and activities. The board would like a formal vote from all committee members on the focus as a recommendation to the board. So So is there discussion that goes with this motion? Is that
Absolutely.
your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely. There's a lot of discussion.
yeah. Now, one of the questions that has come to me has been in regard to sequence of motion and discussion and that kind of thing. We typically announce the item and then talk about it and then seek a motion, right?
Correct.
All right. All right, let's do it that way. So, Conrad, do you want to take this item?
Sure, absolutely. So from when we last met the Finance Committee, we had a board meeting in between then and now. And at that board meeting, I provided an update from the Finance Committee from kind of what we've done and what we've talked about. And here we are again, coming back and kind of getting back to the whole concept of the focus of the committee. And we actually got direction from a board member to say they really would like us as a group to kind of discuss really so we can get down to the business that we really want to get down to really talk about what we as a group think the focus of this committee really should be. And along with that, he wanted me to come up with what I think the focus should be, which I think they'll be pretty aligned when after we have the conversation of what that should be. And so I think it's now a couple meetings back and a couple meetings before that, we talked about goals. What are we trying? This is a new committee. You know, we've had some good meetings, we've had some challenging meetings, and really trying to stay focused on what our goal is for this committee. And so I think instead of using the term goal, Board Member Escobedo really focused in on the term focus for the committee. What should our committee really be focused on? And that will drive agenda items, that will drive presentations, that will drive data that's brought forward to the committee to be looked at, and then to make recommendations that then go back to the board. And so I don't know how or who would like to start on that. I know we've gone around a couple times with kind of what are we doing here and how can we make the best use of this time. I realize people coming at 4:30 on an afternoon is an impact on your day, and I appreciate people coming and being a part of this. And I'm trying to really align what we as a committee want with what the board is really wanting us to do. And I know there's some different views on what that would look like. So does anybody want to kind of start the conversation? And I think once we start the conversation, that'll kind of feed into the conversation, and we'll really kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of what our community expects from us as a committee, what the board expects from us as a committee, and especially for me, so that I will provide for this committee as this committee would like for me to bring things forward to the committee. So would anyone like to start? And I'll be taking notes.
I would love to go back to the
Can
focus areas we suggested 6 months ago. Oh, sorry about that. It'd be great to go back to the focus areas we discussed 6 months ago and re-talk about whether those are appropriate now or not. From my recollection, one of the areas is to reduce our deficit, simultaneously reducing the deficit to improving education for our students. So not reducing deficit by cutting costs, but coming up with other ways to reduce the deficit that improves education for the students.
Okay. All right, anybody like to follow up on that? That was definitely something we've heard before.
No, I would just concur with that. I think, was always the idea that, again, to help out the board understand the finances, understand and do any sort of work where we can dig into individual parts of the income statement to figure out ways to optimize the cost structure. Also look at different ways to optimize the revenue side of things. And so it was always thought, at least from my perspective, that it was going to be reduction of the deficit and how we can be directed by the board in things that we can look into to help the likes of you, Conrad, to dig in and find those cost savings or revenue opportunities. So I concur.
And I would also almost challenge us to look at this committee as maybe the deficit's gone and we have a full reserve and economic times are fantastic. What would we then do as a committee? So think of it, I think the immediate need is what you've both talked about, but I think longer term as we develop a focus, they'll kind of come together and how that would look. So, Celeste?
I feel like we made a lot of progress in our last meeting talking about the steps to getting towards a financial plan that really supports our future strategic plan. So that this committee works to help create a 3 to 5 year financial plan. How do we move from budgeting 1 year at a time to thinking more long term? So to me, it's a lot about process, how we improve our processes, our budgeting processes, and also potentially financial policies to support excellent financial management in our district. So a policy component.
Okay. Bill, did you?
Well, I'm sitting here looking for our resolution.
I've linked it so many times to our agenda. You had mentioned it, and I didn't link it to the agenda. I can bring it up.
Well, so I just want to make sure, I don't disagree with any of this. I think that this committee was created by a board resolution, and we really need to look at what the resolution says the purpose of the committee is. It's not, I don't believe it's our job to redefine what the board suggested the committee's purpose was. We can expand on it, and I think maybe within what's there, but I'm sorry, I was expecting to see the resolution. I think we should take a look and see how what we just said fits into what the board requested when they created the committee.
My recollection is that the way that it was worded kind of left it open
So
without having anything precise. Yeah.
So initial goals about introductory review, we've done those things. I think that that's something that we're going to need to continue to come around as new people get onto the committee. Familiarizing with the current budgeting process. Conrad's been doing a great job of stepping us through that process. For me, one of the questions is, as we step through it, it's actually the same time that things are happening. So one of the questions that I'd like to see us answer is, how does our sequence of work fit into current year budgeting versus next year budgeting and that kind of thing? So let's see, formulating recommendations to enhance the budget process and achieve identified goals. So
And what's identified goals on that last statement?
So that's a really good question. Can you go back up?
I think that piece of it is what's missing,
Yeah.
and we can't formulate recommendations without a little more detail on some of the kind of A and B, conducting, familiarizing. We have done that, but now we have to dig a little deeper in order to formulate recommendations, and I think that was what happened, at the last meeting, delving into the G&A.
Yeah.
And again, always with that goal of the strategic plan, what does the board and the district want to achieve overall, with the focus on education for the students and more opportunities and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Are there any other identified goals within here?
Let me look. I
Let me
think
see what the whereas.
there was an updated version.
Oh, yeah.
That's still the same one.
Let's see if I can get it.
Conrad, I just sent you the edited resolution.
You did? Is there anybody, while I'm looking for this, is there anybody else who hasn't had something to say, have something to say while I dig?
It just, I'm struggling with, and it seems like there is some direction from the board to give recommendations, and then yet the board was created as, and it seems like that wasn't to give recommendations, so. So I think that's, I don't know.
It's confusing, isn't it?
It is confusing, yeah, like, are we
Yeah.
supposed to be, it sounds like we're not supposed to be looking for specific recommendations, but that's really what we would need to do to create a systemic budgeting plan moving forward that's gonna be helpful, so. Yeah, I'm a little confused and a little bit, I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there.
So here's the updated version, but Celeste, did you want to go? Yeah, you- No, I just wanted to point out there's, this is the language as it was updated, because you remember, I think it was in December the board met, and there was some additional attempt to clarify the role of what we're trying to accomplish here as a group. And I think it gets messy between what's the role of the board and what's the role of the committee. And so, Celeste?
I think to that point, what I've learned very recently, which is why I have not brought it up before today, is that it would be extremely helpful, and it is commonly that board members are given training in financial oversight and budget development, as are finance committees. So I wonder, like, there, for example, is a model policy about board PD and finance committee PD. We could bring that to the board as a recommendation, that perhaps what we need is training specifically to how a finance committee should work
Right.
for a school district. I mean, we're definitely not the first one, you know.
Right.
And also that as board members, recommending that every board member is trained in this as well. I think that could give us all a baseline understanding so that we can have a better conversation, because I also feel like the board doesn't have a clear idea of what the finance, you know, we keep going back and forth between what does the board do, what does the finance committee
Right.
do? So maybe just some guidance and a
I
little
think-
structure.
Absolutely. And I've reached out to School Services of California, who is a real resource for school districts in California. And they have a lot of experts in finance and budget and a lot of different topic areas. And they have done this before. So they're going to put a proposal together for me, for the board, for finance committee, for maybe we do it all at one time, or I'm not sure how that would work. But I think that is a reasonable ask.
It seems like we're recreating the wheel a little bit, in my opinion. Finance committees exist across nonprofits, for-profits, school districts, and they all have a very similar purpose. So at board levels, you don't have the time to really get into the granular detail.
Right.
It's very high level, and so you depend on that finance committee to do the deeper dive and to come back with the recommendations. Here's our summary of what the deeper dive pulled out and presented, and that's what goes to the board. We're not operating in that capacity.
Yeah.
I believe that was the intent at the original conversation a year ago, as to we need a finance committee to delve into the deeper things, because we just don't have time at the board level.
Right.
And so I don't know that we need another consultant or advice on a finance committee, because it's what everybody already does. Like, there's a lot of commonalities to that. I do understand it's confusing. It says, give a recommendation, don't give a recommendation, have a goal, don't have a goal. Now let's call it a focus area. It's kind of like a pinball machine going back and forth.
Right.
But I did like seeing that on the agenda, to say, let's have a focus, whatever it is, pick
Right,
something.
right. And
And keeping it in alignment with the strategic plan
Sure.
specifically.
Ken,
Yeah, I just wanted to say it'd behoove us to get some clarification and get better understanding as we move forward. That way we're all on the same page, and we can eliminate some of the confusion that's going on and just make it very clear.
are you talking about the focus? Are you talking about the budget? You're talking about everything?
I'm
Get some
talking about
clarification.
everything. But thank you. I want
Yeah.
to clarify that.
Yeah.
I want to say that the third bullet is different than what we read on the first one, and I think that gets at exactly what we're trying to accomplish here.
The third bullet.
Formulate recommendations to enhance the budget process to achieve identified goals. Again, any recommendation that the committee presents to the board must be approved by the majority of the committee prior to presentation and identified as advisory. I think it still begs the question of to achieve identified goals. And I want to tell you why I keep going back to this. I know it feels bureaucratic, I know it feels confusing, but imagine that this room is empty and a whole another group of people come in. Because that's going to happen eventually. We have to establish something in writing that will help us understand what the purpose is going forward, no matter who's sitting in these chairs. And I don't think this current document does it. So perhaps this conversation that we're having is exactly what needs to then go to memorializing what it is we're doing. When it talks about identified goals, whose goals? Is it district mission and vision and strategic plan? Is it this committee's goals? Is it Conrad's goals?
It should be the district's goals. There shouldn't be different goals. We have one shared unified goal, and our purpose is to further that with the expertise we have, focusing only on
Can somebody identify
finance.
what that one goal is?
Well, I think there's 3 or 4 goals.
But I think the board did give the finance committee a mandate for the G&A analysis and to come back with,
Yeah.
so that was our first active thing, which
Right.
we've not pursued,
So,
right? So like, that's actually a direct mandate from the board for the finance committee to execute upon. And we haven't done it.
I mean, I kind of feel like instead of relitigating all this, because to me, the GNA piece collaborates to review the district's financial and operational performance. So that fits under that. And then, as well as recommendations to assist the board with its oversight with budgeting. For example, in our last board meeting, I asked the board set parameters to give direction for the budget. Perhaps one thing the finance committee could do is help set a process for how does the board set parameters. So so things like that. I don't know if specific issues the board is facing. We could just start working on something in the interim. And then I think we had the diagnostic test, and we said in 6 months you're going to bring that back to us and see how far the district has come. So we have at least a goal that's happening in 6 months. So GNA is kind of short term. I think help with the board parameters would be very useful because we talked about setting board parameters for the next budget, but that hasn't happened before. So what is that process? And then a 6-month goal. So I don't know if that would work for everyone, or do you have other more concrete? Because I feel like we just need to choose a few things to work on.
I would just,
Agreed.
I mean, I'd say just as background, the district lost $33 million last year. We're going to lose $22 million this year. We're going to lose $11 million in the next 2 years. 70% of our reserves are gone, right? So like the goal, in my opinion, and I think the board is on board with this, is we got to find a way to stop that, right? And that's number one. So all this other stuff, it's now almost been like 9 months and we've done nothing,
Right.
right? And it's all about figuring out what's the process and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's very simple in my mind that this district is in really bad financial shape, and we are here to help stop that and turn it in the right direction. That's both on the cost side and the revenue side. And I think we have experts here that can really help on the financial side, and then we have the experts that can help on the education side. Like, we have the team. I just think we need to get out of our way and start doing it.
So what would you recommend as the next step?
I think we did exactly what was meant right here. We formulated a recommendation. We got unanimous support from the Finance Committee. It went to the board. It was voted on and passed. They gave us direction to come and execute upon it, right? I think we're doing it.
Yeah, but the GNA expense is a small portion of how much we need to.
Right, so I
Yeah.
think there's more to be done. I get it, but like, that's the first step. And so I think we need to build on that and keep following that step.
So I'm hearing these numbers, and I've heard them as we first met, and they were projections, and I just want to know, are those actuals, or those are just, again, projections, or is it 22 that we're looking at possibly being in a deficit of, or what is the actual?
For
Where
this-
where do we currently stand? It's in the
column
second?
right here.
For this year,
For
yes.
this year.
And then we're
Last year
working
is an
on the
actual
budget
33 million.
for next year. Numbers change, but I think the general concept is we have cost cutting to
That's
do,
the loss this year.
and we have evaluation
That's
to
the
do.
Forecasted loss next year, forecasted.
And so, it is not necessarily the sole responsibility of this committee to do that. I mean, we're part of the process. This committee is part of the process to identify some of the areas, like the GNA, for us to look at and bring back and have the conversation and make a recommendation, which is kind of what we've done. I think there's a little more looking into the GNA to do. But I think then what's next? And so that's where I'm trying to line up topics or programs or things to continue to dig into. And so what does that format look like for us? And so is it bringing, I think, standard set of budget to actual statements each meeting, program financial statements for different programs, special education, mental health, general education, you know, like all the different pieces, you have to kind of break them down. And I think that gets to what Celeste was talking about, or someone had mentioned, it's too much for the board to look at a board meeting, but that's where getting into the detail kind of gets to this committee. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, is kind of getting into that detail.
Yeah, but I think I've heard two recommendations that I think are spot on. One is focused on deficit reduction, right? And so then that can be recommendations from everyone, right? So we've had one recommendation, there are more recommendations that can come. The second is about the revenue side, which Diana's talked a lot about, and then on the future planning side, which Celeste has talked about. And so I personally think that is a framework for what we can use going forward.
Okay, Derek?
So, I appreciate what Bill said earlier about, like, we need to create systems for this. So if we're thinking long-term for this, one of our main things is to ensure that, the economic viability of our district, right? That seems like what we are. I would say there are hundreds, if not thousands, of districts across California right now that are in the same situation. So I don't think it's that we lost money. I think we're spending more than we could continue to spend, right? But I think everyone's in this situation, not everyone, but
Many are.
the vast majority of districts. So I think the way out of that is to connect our board priorities to our spending. And I think in a district, the vast majority of the money is spent on personnel. So if we're actually gonna, put some recommendations forth, maybe we need to spend some time matching up the board priorities with our spending on personnel. And I think that's the hardest thing that the board struggles with is, because that's the huge part of the budget. So I also like what we did last time where you identified some areas where the spending had grown larger than in other areas, and maybe there's some areas there too that we could work on, like even, that led to the insurance conversation.
Right.
Do we need a new insurance carrier? Do we need, I don't know if we can go away from Cisco, whatever. But those would be a couple of things that we could do too.
Right. And so it's, from what I can bring to this committee, it's then what data information can I bring to this committee from one meeting to the next to really dig into what are those areas to look at next. I know we say personnel, but personnel is split in 50 different ways of which program they're in, and is it restricted, are they unrestricted, are they part of the after-school program and the before-school program and food service. I mean, there's a lot of different moving parts there, but I think it's kind of looking at what's the program and what's a reasonable staffing level for that program.
The one thing I would add to that is going to say, it does seem that we all need to have an understanding of what's happening. I feel like we've discovered that I'm looking at my budget much closer than any of you are. I know where my personnel are spent.
Yeah.
I'm sure Clancy knows where her people are spent. So maybe one thing this committee needs to do is make sure there's a shared understanding. I mean, if we all understood where all the people were,
Right.
and what they were doing, that might lead us all to look at, oh, wow, we're spending a lot of money, say, in this area, science specialists or whatnot, but our priorities are math and English, and that's just an example. I don't know, because I don't know where everybody's spending money, but that seems like that's a key component that we all understand where it's going. So, yeah, there's a lot of different categories, but we need to categorize them in order to evaluate them.
Right. And bring them forward to be evaluated, to look at. Diana?
We had talked 6 months ago or so about having budget to actual financials every meeting, because that's what most finance committees review, is the budget to actual. And I know you presented it early on, but that's not part of the regular meeting, and I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I think some sort of enhanced dashboard transparency that we can also create that would be easier for the board to understand, so that they can have a pulse on the health
Right.
for things that matter. And maybe we can help design what that might look like to make it easier, so that there are a lot of variables that you're having to juggle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that idea, like standardized financial reporting for both the board and the finance committee. I think that sounds like a great idea. And then one thing I would say, just back very briefly to process and parameters, the reason that I think parameters are important are basically when we have things like, staffing information, how do we actually make decisions? Like the parameters say, how do we do it? Like for me, I think we should also have effectiveness data or cost effectiveness data, like principles basically by which we're making decisions. So that's why I go back to we need to ensure that we're investing in classrooms first, you know what I mean, and making sure we have a full program at our high schools. So otherwise anything could be, you know what I mean? The reason that parameters exist is it gives kind of guardrails and what are the most important things that we need to invest in, and also how are we going to make decisions, and what are things that are kind of not negotiable. That's why I think that process piece is important. But I think really typically boards are the ones who are setting those parameters, and then it allows us to know, as a finance committee.
Yeah, no, I'm all for process and parameters. It's absolutely critical. I'm 100% on board. And I think what Dara was saying is it's spot on. You're knee deep right into the specifics of the school, the people, and everything. You know it inside and out far better than I do, looking at the big picture numbers, right? And so I think the beauty of a finance committee is you have people that are really good at numbers, and real people that are really good at running their school and understanding the specifics of the school. And I think together that's where we can bring together the process and the parameters with the analysis. But my view is, just as a community member, then looking at the numbers, is we can't just keep doing limited work.
I like how Mr. Wood, I think about the whole, getting in our way sort of thing. I think doing what we did with the whole GNA, but then sort of like a copy paste. Let's find 2 or 3 or 4 more, different sections. Like Mr. Jesse, you mentioned about breaking it up, sort of mental health or special ed, that kind of thing, where we can actually go in and be specific and find different cost effective, where are we being the most, where is our money going the most in within those
Right.
kind of larger categories, and then is that money being spent in the most effective way? I think that's what I see for best.
And I think an element of this we haven't really talked about yet is this committee, and it brings an element of transparency to the community, to our staff, to around our whole district. Because when I go around and I talk to people about budget, about what's going on with the district, it's amazing to me that people don't really understand. Some don't even realize we have a deficit. And so it's about trying to get everything that I know that we talk about, and I think this committee is a great forum to bring that out to the committee or to the community, to say, hey, here's what we're looking at, here's what's been spent. There's nothing behind the curtain here that we're trying to keep behind the curtain. It's really about, the good work that we can do, and it's getting there and getting this out to people. And as we continue to move forward, there's all the pressures of cost. We're hopefully finishing up negotiations either this week or next week. We've been in negotiations probably 4 or 5 different sessions over the last 2 weeks, but we've made some good progress. We did a lot of good work with the teachers. We still have to finish with CSEA. But again, the costs associated with that, giving wage increases, COLA, cost of living increases that aren't matching inflation, but it's what we can afford and what can we really afford. So it's kind of like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and how do we manage that? And kind of bringing that conversation here to say, okay, here's the money that's on the table that's been agreed upon. Now we have to account for that, and that's impact across the district. And so there's a lot of those pieces, and so putting it all together in a reportable way for this committee to really make a difference in, you know, identifying what and how and what to recommend to the board. So, were there any more comments? And I would say from here, let's try to maybe put together that, I think Todd had mentioned those, I had written them down, the kind of 3 areas to focus on: the deficit reduction, look at the revenue side, and future planning. And so maybe how do we word that in a recommendation to the board to say, this is what we're going to do? Bill or Celeste?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess I also would add Diana's recommendation of standardized financial reporting for both the Finance Committee and the board. I think that that would be hugely helpful.
Okay, so I'm gonna move away from the process thing and say that I absolutely agree with the challenge of addressing a structural deficit that means that we're spending more than what we have every year. It's not sustainable. It's never been sustainable. Districts get into those places and get out of them. Lots of them are, but this is serious for every district across the state. And we actually have a little bit more control than others do, because in most school districts, declining enrollment means less money for them. That's not exactly the case for us. It can mean less federal money for us, but because our revenue is based on property tax that doesn't go down when the enrollment does, where other districts, the enrollment goes down and what the state gives them goes down as well. That's a tool for us to understand the pattern ahead of potential reduction or declining enrollment is part of the pressure valve that allows us to do what we do. And so my comment is, yes, those 3 things are absolutely primary, and understanding what it looks like to have a long-term plan that's number 1 goal is to get to ability to balance a budget. And sometimes a budget looks like it's a deficit, and it may not turn out to be by the time the year is over, because things have changed. Budgeting has, you've over budgeted or underused utilities. This kind of thing happens. But we're in a scary time too, because all we hear about is everything that's going up in price too. Anyway, I wanted to move away from process long enough to give my full support behind those 3 ideas.
So again, how do I frame this for the board to say the committee recommends to the board that the committee focuses on those 4 things? It's the 4 things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, we're asked to provide recommendations. So why don't we make, we say we will make recommendations as a committee to find avenues for deficit reduction, for revenue optimization, we recommend that there's monthly, actual versus budget. And then.
I think it might be a little bit more than just budget to actual, so like standardized financial reporting.
Perfect, thank you. And then I forget what the 4th one was, but we just couch it like it asks us to. We will make recommendations for these 4 things.
And could we have a timeline? Like, when are we going to make the recommendations?
Well, I think in terms of discussing with the board for the board meeting, we say this is what we're gonna do.
Right.
I don't,
I think it's an ongoing
I
conversation.
don't think, I think every committee, hopefully we are coming up with more recommendations. It sounds like there is a current recommendation for the 3rd point, the budgets to actuals, but
No, that was 4th. There was a 3rd one in
Oh,
between
yeah,
there.
the 4th one was,
Future planning.
future planning.
Yeah, so
So
a 3 to 5 year
Right.
plan.
And I think that's an important piece, because we've talked about kind of developing a longer-term financial strategic plan. Now we have the board priorities, and we're trying to put that together in a strategic plan that can lead the budget and kind of guide. There's so many forces pressing against each other for the resources we have. I mean, we have negotiations, we have the desire for the 7th period day, we have the desire to expand the high school, we have expanding needs in special education and mental health services, and so like how do we as a committee kind of, we don't want to pit any of those against each other, but how do we balance what gets what and how? And I think that's really important to get a look into, because everybody, depending on where you live, who you are, has a different view into what's most important.
Well, I
Ken.
think we made some headway here on identifying those 4
Yeah.
points. But to get there to the board, we'll need to make a decision. It'd have to be approved by this committee. Anything that goes before the board is to be approved by this committee. On bullet point 3 over there.
Right. Yeah. Any recommendations, yeah, would be approved. Sure. I have, let's see, I have deficit reduction was the first one.
Revenue optimization, strategic planning, or longer-term planning, and monthly standardized financial reports for both the Finance Committee and the board.
Yep.
I would like to suggest that we prioritize those, almost in that order. I think the financial reports, so I think the budget deficit is the most critical. Exactly what you were saying, Bill, is we do have a lot more flexibility than other districts. And what is concerning to me is that should have lightened our load, and we still have such a significant deficit, even though theoretically we have that extra flexibility. So that would be the first one, and then the second would be the revenue optimization, and those two things will feed into what are the metrics we need for the standardized financial reports, and how does that feed into the long-term planning. And exactly what you mentioned, Conrad, I don't think things pit against each other. They sort of do. We can only choose one or the other sometimes, but being creative, sometimes there's ways to be able to balance it. I mean, remember Celeste coming up with some ideas quite a long time ago on changes to programming that actually impact costs. I don't remember the specifics, but some way to where programmatic changes can improve costs and increase output for the kids. So that's where the Finance Committee might overlap with another committee or department to say, look into this. Is there a way that a program could be revised that could have a really solid financial impact?
And I feel like special ed, for example, is.
Could be.
Yeah.
Again, that's
One
outside
example,
of my
but-
expertise, but I
Yes,
do know
definitely.
that there's this overlap, and it's not just about cutting costs, it's about improving processes and what can we do
Right.
so that we don't have to make always hard decisions, so.
Right.
I'm thinking out loud here, because if we're gonna put forth our first priority is deficit reduction, I feel like if we're not prioritizing if we're not thinking about where the money is going, because here's the thing. The budget for this year is largely passed, right? The work we're gonna do really is ongoing and moving forward. I would love to see us sort the money out so we all know where the money's going, and then think about how we can reduce the areas that we think we're spending more money than is a priority, and then and think about how we're going to increase our investment in the priority areas. Because I think the way that we've cut so far the last few years has been whoever just doesn't speak up. And that is not a good way to do it when our district is, when and I know so many people in our district are focused on equity, but it's those folks that are not showing up that's the stuff that gets cut, and the people that do show up, for example, the 7th period day, that's the one that gets the investment. So I think just thinking out loud, a good long-term strategy for us might be let's look at where all the money is being spent first, so we understand that, and then let's look at the deficit reduction. And I know some of that's going to be hard to categorize, like where do you put an elementary teacher in which bucket, but I think we can, the areas where we can make some difference are able to be, that are going to be able to be moved around, could be more easily put into buckets.
Yeah.
I think that is a fantastic idea, and I wonder if perhaps could Diana and Conrad talk about what a report to the Finance Committee might look like that very easily lets
Or
us understand.
Todd and
Or
Conrad.
Todd and, well, I don't know, you
Diana.
brought up financial reporting, so I
I'm
chose
hurt.
you. But
No,
anyway,
Todd and I
it
have
could
had
be,
some good conversations.
but
and I think
basically,
we kind
how
of
do-
speak the same language.
yes, yeah, but I think to Dare's point, like, how much are we spending at every school on what? And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think we still don't have like a very user-friendly way to just,
Right.
yeah, I didn't mean to,
Volunteer.
yes, volunteer, whatever it is,
No,
yeah.
I think that's definitely a reasonable way to look at it, because I've tried, when we first started this, I tried a certain way, and it wasn't getting us where we wanted to get to quick enough out of the gate, so we kind of moved away from that. But I think from what I'm hearing from Dare, the 4 points that we talked about that started with deficit reduction, we put one in front of that to say, where's the money going? Where, kind of back to that learning piece of, where's the money going?
Well,
In one meeting.
And, or in chunks, or,
I-
I mean, because I tried that and it didn't really go well.
yeah, so my opinion is that we do need the information, absolutely. But I also think we should do a little bit of our own homework. So you send the information, so we come to the meeting prepared, so that we don't lose meetings and meetings just being educated, walking through things that we might have read, before. And I think focusing on Dare's point, using the G&A as an example, what does it look like if we take an area and actually go through the whole process to be able to say, this is where we think we can make an actual recommendation?
Right.
And we use that as the sample and say, let's go all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
We have the G&A, we need to look at these areas, and let's get to the end where it's like, here's what we think, as a
Right.
committee, we think should change, and that might give us the blueprint to say, now let's tackle another area. So, and then seeing the overall areas of where things are going might then elicit, what's the next area we should focus on? Where are the areas of savings?
And just to put a number on that, like the deficit forecast for next year is $7 million loss. The three largest other G&A line items, if we just run rate it back to inflation, saves $3.2 million. So it cuts a deficit by 50%, and none of those three, one of them's business services, so that's not even employees, right? That's like
No, that's a lot of
It's an-
employees.
Oh, it is employees.
It is-
Okay, so I
it's
take that back.
payroll,
I take
accounts
that back.
payable,
But I think a lot of
technicians.
it's at least non-union, right? And so like we have more control versus
Yeah.
negotiation
I mean,
type of stuff.
outside of management, they're all union, so, I mean.
But
But it's,
There
so
will be-
providing you the information to say, hey, that recommendation makes sense and is doable, or maybe it isn't. Depending on, here's
Yeah.
the data, here's where it is, here's what people do,
Yeah.
here's the functions that are done in those areas.
Yeah.
Um,
So there likely will be hard decisions. I mean, things have to
Right.
reduce, and if something has grown 70, 80% or 300%, maybe we have 5 people doing the job of what should only take 2 based on standard practices,
Right.
new technology, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So that does mean less people,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not in the teaching area right now. And
Right.
those dollars can be used for enhancing, again, technology and other ways of processes. But we don't know what that is, but
Right.
something's off kilter. We know that.
I think that there's an implied expectation that there are things that we can find that will solve these problems without hurting. But the bottom line is, I see things, I hear numbers from you that I scratch my head as well, and I want to know, why does something go up at that higher percentage, double, triple what anything else is happening in G&A? And then I hear, well, it might be because something different got coded in a different way. There's so many questions about why does that increase happen? Is it because things are more expensive? Is it because we've hired more teachers for less students? Is it something that we can fix around the edges? But frankly, a $7 million deficit isn't going to get fixed by trimming around the edges. It's going to get fixed by making really difficult decisions about what you don't do anymore. And it goes into things like closing schools, deciding what programs can happen. And many of these things are tied into agreements that we have made that are binding in terms of how many kids can be in a class for a teacher. All of those kind of things that have been said, it's very possible. And this is part of my frustration, because I've been in this business and I've watched it so long. It's very possible that you can look in every little corner and every crevice and find all the inefficiencies and the efficiencies and fix it, and you're still going to be upside down, because the picture here is 85% people. People are going to hurt when you make cuts. There's just no way around it. You can find, I'm sure there's plenty to find, and I don't know how many millions of dollars we could find in things to just do better, but it's going to come down to things that hurt. And I want us to be prepared. And I'm not saying that there's an answer that I know, but we just need to figure out how to decide
Right.
where are we going to hurt. And that comes right back to budgets based on the priorities that the district has for their employees and their students and their families and their community. I think there's going to be lots of things to look at to say, I wonder how they did it, because almost every district in California is facing deficits and problems like this. And it's not because there aren't good processes going on. It's because we're being asked to do things with less money that we really should, and expect that people can live in a community like this without having strong advocates for giving them better salaries and that kind of thing, so that they can stay or we can attract people. We're looking at situations where it's harder and harder to attract people to any kind of job in a community on the coast. We don't get more money because we're on the coast. Maybe some of the answer is for the state to look at how they distribute funding. Should there be more money for places that are incredibly more expensive to live? Anyway, I don't want to feel all the time like a pariah, or like I'm putting up roadblocks and this and that, but I've seen this over and over and over, and all the good intentions of the world in trying to find efficiencies are often defeated by the fact that we have to do things that hurt. We have to lose people when 85% of our budget is people-oriented. If you took everything else away, don't buy anything, just have people, and that means in buildings without lights, we could save 15%, and we couldn't operate. Anyway.
York? Any thoughts? I'm sorry to kind of call you out, but you just
that's okay.
came in, and
That's what I get for being late.
I really value having our bargain unit reps here. I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's going to be hard to find cuts that aren't hurtful and difficult. And I think we have to do them with efficiency and long-term vision in mind, right? We can't just say, oh, that person left, so we don't need a principal at SBCA anymore. We need to be thoughtful and holistic in doing that. It's not going to be easy. People are going to be mad, and that's the difficulty of where we are and the business we're in.
So I can say, Bill, real quick, you said you scratch your head and you want to know what's behind the numbers. I'm with you, and that's why we brought it up last meeting.
Yeah.
And we came with 3 specific things to dig into, and it wasn't done. And so that's a frustration I have now that it's going to be now June next week, and the year's over, right? And again, we're not doing what the board told us to do. And so I'm with you, I'm scratching my head, but we are providing things to be dug into that are not being dug into.
Okay.
Right. No, they're being dug into. It's just, this was a direction from the board to do this meeting, and there's one more piece to do with the GNA, and we're gonna do it. It wasn't meant that it wasn't going to be done.
Understood.
I guess we can get to that. I would almost like to propose adding a meeting between now and our June meeting before budget adoption, but I think we have an agenda item kind of later on there for those that might be interested in doing that. So I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the board that the focus of this committee is based on 5 critical points of where's the money going.
Where's the 5th one?
That was the fifth one.
The first
We
one.
added
Where's
that to
the
the
money
front.
going?
Oh.
We started at 3, then got to
Got it.
4, then we
Okay.
added one to the top. So where the money is going, deficit reduction, revenue optimization, longer-term strategic planning, and providing monthly financial reporting that'll provide metrics for long-term planning.
For finance committee and board being different ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll make the motion that we add that as focus. Does anybody have any? Second from Ken?
All in favor? Aye.
Everybody voted for it. Thank you very much.
Can I point out that when we initially established hold dates for the meetings and when we were going to have them, one of them was May 26th. I have that on a calendar as a potential meeting, so this is a May meeting, but
Right.
if you're looking for another one,
I would like to add another one before now, and I bring the proposed budget to the board. I am doing a finance update for the board on Tuesday, that I'm bringing some budget assumptions and some good information, but I want to kind of finish up the conversation to make a final recommendation on the GNA. I want to do that sooner than later, so
the reason that works is that typically we have, that's a third Tuesday, and typically we have a board meeting, but for this month, we have a board meeting, only one next week.
That's great for me.
so you said the 26th?
26th?
Okay. Okay, so can we move on to the next agenda item? And this one is a time-sensitive item. Let me see if I can bring up slides. It's a tax and revenue anticipation note. And this is it's something that after second interim, analyzing cash flows, what happens is there are certain borrowings available to school districts and local governments that allow them to make up for cash flow deficiencies throughout the year, and this is one of them. I've been working with our financial advisor on this, and I just, as a little bit of overview, being a basic aid district, we get big chunks of property tax. We get them in December, and we get it in April, and there's not a whole lot in between. And so what is available to school districts is a device called a tax revenue anticipation note. And it's really based on the anticipation of receiving your property taxes. And so there's some interesting information here that was provided. Our assessed value that is used kind of to determine our tax base is not based on market value. It's based on what's assessed, and if someone's had their home for a long, long time, they don't pay very much property tax as opposed to a home that was just purchased. But for this year, the district's assessed value totaled $71.8 billion. That's billion with a B, representing a 5.26% year-to-year growth, and that's a strong revenue base for us. That is a good thing. As we don't know what's happening with the state and the governor, and he could, the COLA could be nothing, or it could be more. And so with property tax revenues coming in those large installments, what happens when you do cash flow is you still have payroll and bills every month. And so when you have a 20% reserve, there's usually enough cash in the bank to cover those shortfall months. And for a school district, it's usually October, November. And I'll get into, I actually attached a cash flow statement, and we'll kind of look at, there's 3 comparisons to do there. And so the TRAN really helps you link the cash flows, yeah.
Is this the first time that we're doing this, or have you done this in the past? Or has
The
this
district has done it
in
a
the
number of
past?
times. The last one was in 2019-20, I
Thank you.
believe,
That was my
yeah.
question.
But since COVID, all that extra COVID money came in, cash was pretty flush, and so it wasn't as necessary. And so I provided all of here's actually a little timeline of how many trans the district has done in the past. And for a while, they were doing them every year. The one in 2011 was 22 million. And so this process works in that I need to bring something to the board on Tuesday, but I thought this was a good thing to kind of bring to Finance Committee. It's a very important financial decision this district is making in borrowing $23 million short term. And so basically, you get it in July and you repay it before the end of the year, so it's not really on your financial statements as a liability. And the money that you get in July sits in a separate fund accruing interest to help pay for the interest that you'll be paying on the device. So hopefully there's not a big difference in what interest due compared to what interest earned. And it's great because the county treasurer's office is earning almost 3.5% now, which a couple of years back it was around 1%. And keep in mind, as a local government, as a school district, our money, the bulk of that property tax money has to be in the county treasury. That's like a government code law. We can't pull our money out and invest it on the side in some other way. It has to stay in the county treasury. I mean, we have little revolving cash accounts, school sites have some accounts, but the bulk of our property taxes have to be deposited and kept on in the county treasury.
So
And s-
Conrad, is the primary reason that you're considering this is because the reserve levels are not high enough to fund the shortfalls?
The cash reserve levels, yes.
Right, and that's just the unrestricted, so not restricted.
It's
just
all cash in the
all-
general
all of
fund.
it,
It's
okay.
all cash in the general fund and our special reserve fund 17.
On 17.
Yeah.
And what is the interest rate you expect on, I mean, I know that day-to-day rates move and some
It-
will change,
it-
but like, if you were to price it tomorrow, what would the bond price at? I guess it's you know,
Yeah, that's a good question. It had to make the decision, is it a competitive sale, a negotiated sale, and all of these pieces? I don't know that they've set on a rate. I would imagine it's somewhere around 2 or 3%. But I'm kind of waiting to see what those numbers look like. We're in the process of kind of working through those numbers. But from one month to the next, markets shift and the rates can change.
and I noted in here, you said there's like, you know, fees and all that sort of stuff, legal, all that kind of stuff, like,
Right.
what do you expect that to be on a $23 million raise?
And all of that usually comes out of premium, and I think most of that is probably in the $100,000 to $250,000 range, depending how big the issue is.
Thank you.
But those are good questions that I hope to have more final answers for the board on Tuesday when the resolution actually comes. Yeah.
I'm just curious, you mentioned that when you have 20% reserves, you can cover your cash flow fluctuations. Is at 10% reserves, can you cover your cash flow fluctuations? I mean, at what level of reserves do you typically, can you cover it?
So keep
Yeah.
in mind that percent reserve is unrestricted. Because there was a time we had a 20% reserve and large balances in restricted accounts too. You add them both together, and it was, I think, when we get to the cash flows, look at the cash flows, we had over 54, 55 million in cash from one month to the next. And so that might be good to actually look, jump to the cash flows. And so what we'll start here, I know it's probably kind of small, I'll try to make it a little bigger. So on the top, you can see July, this is 2024-25. This is last year. We had $56 million to start the year. And then you can see the top section there, 4.1 in revenue. And then August, we only got 1.5. We'll kind of go through the revenues first. But you can see you get to December and we get 66 million in revenue there. So really the short cash flow months become October, November are the tightest months because our last property tax distribution was back in April. And so you're hoping to stretch what's there long enough to make it to that December amount. And so in looking at the cash flows, you can see the monthly disbursements, which are light during summer, 7 million in July, 9 million in August, but then once school starts, it jumps up to 21, 24, over 20 million a month. Now this is 24, 25. And so the estimate for this year, and we still had some cash to cover when we got really tight. You can see in November, let's see, The ending cash in November got pretty low. October actually went negative in the general fund. We were able to borrow from some of our other funds to cover that being negative. But we're down to 36 million was the beginning cash, and it was 56 million the year before. And I will say, you know, during that time, we agreed upon 15% wage increases for staff, and that was a $23 million investment in our staff. And it was planned to come out of reserve, and so that's where a lot of that cash has gone. And you can see in December, it jumps back up to almost 60 million, and then that's got to take us through the rest of the year. These numbers at the top here are mostly the property tax numbers, and so you can look through all of these, all the disbursements, and then what I provided, we provided the consultant, the financial advisor to determine the sizing of the TRAN. Was the first tab here is the 26-27, the cash flows for next year. Based on what we knew at the time at second interim. Of course, things could change. Money could appear out of nowhere. But what you see happening is by October, or actually by September, we're already negative 14 million. And then October, we go negative 26 million. And we get some revenues in that time. But then in December, we get $73 million in property taxes. And so the way it works is we get the TRAN in July, and it sits in the separate fund earning interest until we need it. And then when we need it, we transfer it over, and then we transfer it back. So we don't need it. We have to pay half of it back mid-year, and the rest of it is paid back at the end of the year, before the books are closed, June 30th. And so this is kind of a leading indicator that kind of takes us back to the whole conversation we had about deficit reduction and decreasing costs and what can we do. And it's important to kind of see that property taxes are our main source of revenue. I know we've talked about revenue optimization and doing what we can here and there, but that's not going to make up 23 million. And those usually come with required expenditure sides to it too. One thing I will also mention as a challenge with property taxes and trying to rebuild a cash balance is, and it usually happens through bargaining, is, you know, we're hoping property taxes come in more than what we projected. I projected 4.5%. But if it comes in at 5.5%, that'll help us build back the reserve and build back cash. But what happens through bargaining, sometimes they'll say, well, if it comes over 5, then anything over 5% gets given out through bargaining, which at a time when you have a balanced budget and you have a good reserve, perfectly reasonable scenario to do, and it's a reasonable thing to ask for. When we're in this kind of cash situation, it really is tough to be able to agree to that because we need to try to rebuild our reserves and our cash. So with that, I mean, we have a couple minutes left. I do want to mention that the last meeting on the Armory is over at Santa Barbara Junior High. I think that starts at 6. I was hoping to get over there before too long, but I don't want to shorten any conversations we need to have here on this. So any other?
I actually had just some questions. So I know like the 23 million will be the biggest note we've done as a district. And
Right.
when I looked at the past, and even like 2021, 14 million note, but it was only 50% of our reserves. Here, a $23 million note is 100% of our reserves.
Right.
And so, you know, in my research, that's been brought up as a risk, because you're basically putting on loan 100% of your reserves. And so, how did you come up with the 23 number, or your advisors, and why wasn't it 20 or 25?
So it's a not to exceed 23. We provided the cash flow statements, and they asked, do we include our special reserve? I said yes, and they kind of came up with a not to exceed. And so if we think it should be less, we can make it less. I just kind of, certain things I rely on the financial advisor to a certain extent to run through their models of what would make the most sense.
But the not to exceed doesn't mean you're committed to that amount
Right.
unless you.
It can be less. It can be less.
But you'll issue the note when, like in the next month?
So we pass the resolution next week. The note actually gets issued in July, I believe,
And you'll
how that
issue, let's say
cash
it's
flow works.
22, just say, it's
Mhm.
not 20, 20, it's, you issue 22 million.
All at one
It's
time.
not like staged. It's
No,
just
no.
22 all up front.
Right. It's a short term, as
And so-
opposed to a general obligation bond where you get like $100 million bond issue and we draw it down 20 million at a time.
Got it.
This is just, you take the whole thing at one time.
Okay.
And I assume there's no option for like a working line of credit concept.
I think that's kind of what this is, but I see what, for
Well-
$20 million,
Just to not draw it down until
Right.
you need it.
draw it down.
Rather,
so you need it.
yeah, so you're only paying for what you
Right.
need and
Right.
it would kind of ramp up. So you need $1 million today, then 5 million, then 7 million.
More like line of credit type of thing.
As I said, a working line of credit.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Again,
Hadn't
that may
thought-
not be possible.
Right.
But banks do give them to corporations. In the
Right.
for-profit world, 20 million is not a big deal on a line of
Right.
credit
Right.
for the right size.
Right.
But that may or may not be possible.
Yeah, no, I can ask the advisor. That's actually a pretty reasonable question. I think these are, I believe, tax exempt on the investor side because they're a government, so the costs are low. I mean, there's a lot of calculations that go into it as opposed to a line of credit. But
Yeah.
I
The other question
try to
is,
know everything I can about everything.
could they issue multiple notes not
Mm-hmm.
to exceed the totality to equal 23 million? So then you have a note for 5, and then another note for 5, and then a note for 10. And then you sort of get the same impact of lowering that cost,
Right,
but they're separate tax exempt notes for the investors.
that's a good
And
question.
it kind of, each one is kind of closed up with a little bow.
Right, right.
Again,
Again,
just
that's
thinking
how-
possibilities.
That's exactly how the general obligation bonds work, except they're over 30
Yep.
years. But I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah.
What, can you have that information on Tuesday when
Yeah.
this item comes up?
When it comes to the board, I think
Good.
they're reasonable questions to bring to the
Good.
board.
Yeah, and I assume that in your cash balance, if you have restricted funds, technically you're not supposed to dip into that to use for unrestricted purposes? And is that not the case?
Right. The only funds we can't use to cover a negative would be the bond funds. We can't borrow from a bond funds that are in
Okay.
another fund.
But you can borrow from restricted reserves.
Yeah, within the general fund. It's all,
Okay,
we look at the general fund as one bank account, basically.
okay.
And it's only the cash. It's, I mean, I know, like, it's not really a big income statement entry, other than it's all on the
Yeah, I
unrestricted
just,
side from the
some
income statement.
restricted funds have limitations on you can't
Absolutely.
use it even for borrowing.
Right.
But you're saying that all the restrictions don't
Yeah,
have that
I
limitation,
think
so that's
entire
okay.
funds, like the bond funds, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right,
Okay.
work that way.
And is the interest rate fixed or floating?
It's fixed, yeah.
Great.
And there's other options for these as well. I'm gonna see how this one goes. There's a state pool of school district trans that may be more beneficial to go that route. I think with the timing now, I had used the advisors that the district has used in the past. As I move forward, if we have to do this again next year, I'm gonna kind of widen the net a little bit. York?
What's the ballpark for how much this costs us?
So, well, my hope is that the interest we earn will cover the interest we pay, so it's close to net nothing.
Okay.
But it could be more. I mean, it
Right.
could be up to $200,000.
Okay.
But there's also, you mentioned a couple $100,000.
Yeah, and fees and stuff.
everything
Right.
on top of
Okay.
that, so.
And that's often covered in the premium, depending on how they're issued on the market. So sometimes they're issued at a premium, and so the premium can be used to cover some of those costs. So I'm anxious to see the numbers. I've asked for numbers by the end of this week so that I can report to the board how that goes. And, yeah. So I just wanted to, this was one of those things, it's not about deficit reduction, but I feel like it's it's a big deal. And these are important because you guys think of questions that I may not think of, and I appreciate the different perspectives on these things. And And I think a good way for us to operate too, which we kind of were doing with the board for a while, is when the agenda goes out, if you have questions after you're able to look at it, fire them off to me ahead of time, and then hopefully I can bring better quality answers to you when we're here. It'll give me a little time to do research.
That's one question I have, and maybe this is when we get to future board meetings. But whether the finance committee can also discuss, issues that are coming before the board in a timely way. So we have these 5 long-term things, but then when things like trans come up,
Right.
they also are discussed within
Right.
the committee. And it would be helpful if it was even before it comes to the board.
Right, and so Allison, my secretary, and I were working on planning dates for the finance committee for next year. I asked for us to try to plan them the week before the board meeting. So we meet on a Tuesday, the agenda's due the Friday, so if we have recommendations or something, then it's timed such that it will. And part of me too, like you had mentioned, like with the TRAN, when things come up, fitting it in to include the finance committee in that conversation even earlier. So I think planning the agenda items around timeliness of topics is important.
So I have a question when we get to the next meeting.
Okay. Well, that was kind of what I had for the TRAN. I just wanted to kind of get this to everybody and not belabor the point. I think they're really good questions. There'll be more conversation I had with the board. The questions you've asked, I'm going to get answers from our financial advisors and try to get some detail for the board as well.
And we're able to bring back the Q&A stuff in our next meeting?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're going to have a special
That was,
meeting.
yeah, that was always,
Well,
Right.
did we agree to adding that meeting?
yeah, can we agree to that? Everybody okay with that? The 26th?
May I ask a quick question just in terms of future agenda items? One thing that keeps on coming up is the Armory, but I haven't seen any financial information around the Armory. For example, like I've asked a few times about staffing, like how are we possibly going to afford the Armory and how does it fit into the rest of our facility plan? So I don't know when that might come up in front of the Finance Committee, but I feel like the Armory is a huge financial
Right.
question mark and would be, I went to an Armory listening session and asked questions, but
Right.
that
I'll have to fit
yeah.
that when I look at the Armory timeline of when they're kind of planning those things. I think bringing back to Finance Committee before that's too far down the road.
Well, to me, it seems like it needs to be early on. Like how are we going to afford to run programs at the Armory? And then I would also love to have that integrated in the facility plan, the overall facility
Right.
plan
And
to look
for me
at
to
that.
do that, I would
Yeah.
need how many classes, how many teachers, what sections, to plan for how much the cost is. But I hear you.
Well, I'm not asking you to plan for it, but it basically seems to me like adding an entire new campus when we're talking about
Right.
potentially closing schools. I just want to understand like what the reasoning is and how the kind of how it is fitting into the whole thing. And then I also have questions about the facility plan. So I know we only have 5 things and
I
it could
know.
just always expand, but that's like a
But that
very
doesn't mean
timely
we
one
couldn't have
because
more topics.
yes.
That fits within.
Yes.
It's in the,
Sustainable
Yeah.
budget period.
Yes,
Yeah.
and long-term planning.
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to leave. You can continue, Celeste can adjourn if you need to do that. But I have to
I will keep
get
you
to
here
the-
forever.
thank you, Bill. I think we're just about done.
Yes.
So,
Comment. Clancy and I have a district meeting on the 26th. Hopefully that can, isn't it?
is it here?
Next door.
Maybe you weren't on there.
I do balanced technology, but it's not.
District Guiding Coalition for PLCs. Oh, you're not on. Yeah, you're on there. You're invited.
Oh, actually, yeah, I did have an admin accepted that one.
No, I haven't either, but it's
Okay.
on there, and then I have an incoming, or I have a night it's starting at 6. I would say this too, like, it seems to me, if I was running this committee, it would seem to me that we should have, like, we need some work time.
Right.
So an hour and a half every month, or even twice a month, doesn't seem to really be cutting it I mean, I would love to just roll up our sleeves, do a half day and put, because I imagine us putting on the board, like, where are we spending our money? Let's figure out the pots, and that just, it just takes some time.
Right.
Now Bill is left, we're having all our meetings.
Right. Yeah. Duly noted, Dare, duly
We're gonna
noted.
do it. I think we gotta do it.
I don't know, a special finance committee meeting? I don't know what everyone thinks, because an hour and a half, how much can we accomplish? I don't know how that works with your schedule.
Never more than 2 agenda items, I can tell you that. I've tried to put 3 and 4, and we never get to 3 and 4. But I do want to say, I did, and I talked to our attorney, and I did add an agenda on here, an item that allows us to take action on an item that might be listed as info. So if we do a presentation on a topic, and we want to make a recommendation to the board on that topic, I want us to be able to make that recommendation to the board on that topic without having to bring it back and all those things. So I thought that might be helpful for us to do. So I have what I need for today, and people feel free to reach out to me if there's a topic that's important or something. Like Diana, you had reached out to me about a topic. I'd see you all the time, and I think it's important that we kind of work together on this. I've been trying to drive it and driving us down different roads, and we need to come back to main road. So I appreciate everybody's patience and support. It's going to be time to break in some new principles here for next year.
But
a new student.
to Principal Holdren's point, do you think we could schedule a longer meeting now or send it out with some potential dates? What do you think would be most productive? Because I would love to, I don't know.
I know. Well, Bill left.
I know,
He's the chair.
and he left me in charge.
Oh, boy. So let's hold on that for right now. I know that's an important thing to do, but let's so we'll still try to do the 26th, and we'll go from there. And I'm going to work on bringing back some more budget items. We're going to bring back the G&A to hammer that thing out till it's done. That'll be first on the agenda. We're going to hammer that thing out until we get to where we want to get with it, and then see how far we go. I'm going to test you all out with some budget reports. If anybody is interested, I can send you some samples, and you can tell me what works for you. So that is what I had for this evening, and hopefully we can really get down to programs and deficit reductions and all the things that we want to do. Again, appreciate the patience. So do you want to adjourn the meeting, Celeste?
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.